Welcome back to the Comeback Kid, everyone. When we were last with you, we were predicting the upcoming MLB awards because awards like the MVP, Cy Young will be announced very soon. And now we're going to let you know what moves, free agent signings, trades to look out for this MLB offseason. So let's start in Miami, guys. So Derek Jeter, as some of you at home may know, recently became one of the owners of the Miami Marlins, and he has made it publicly known that he is willing to sell big key pieces of the Marlins. When we think of the Marlins, I think we immediately jump to Giancarlo Stanton and an amazing player that he is. We jump to Marcell Ozuna and Christian Yelich. The three outfielders that they have on that team is arguably the best three outfielders in the game on one specific team. Arguably, Nate, you're looking at me because you're, Mr. Red Sox over there. So, regardless of whether or not we think they're the best outfield, all three of them are very quality players, right? So this begs the question, though, if Derek Jeter is willing to move any of these players, that would send ripples through the game because each of those players, if they were free agents, would be quite possibly the top three free agents on the market, with the exception of probably J.D. Martinez, or offensive players, I should say. So that begs the question, out of Stanton, Yelich, and Ozuna, who do you guys think is moving off of the Marlins this offseason?
I think that Giancarlo Stanton is moving. Where he's moving, I will not say because that will just make you guys upset.
No,
but
say it. I invite you to
I really do believe that come spring training, Giancarlo Stanton will be a member of the Boston Red Sox. I really do. I think that Dave Dombrowski has the cojones to get a deal done like this. And I really do think that Giancarlo Stanton will be a member of the Red Sox. And can you imagine that if Derek Jeter's first move as owner of the Miami Marlins would be to sell Giancarlo Stanton to the biggest rival of the New York Yankees? That would be crazy. That'd be awesome. I would love it, but it'd be kind of an interesting storyline.
Mm-hmm. A very interesting storyline. And Nate, I want to pose a question to you, Nate. Sorry, Matt. We'll get to you in a sec. That if you were Miami, or if you were Dave Dombrowski of the Red Sox, what would you give up to acquire a player of the caliber of Giancarlo Stanton?
So, the only player that I think is untouchable is Mookie Betts. That is the only guy I think is untouchable. As much as I love Benintendi, Bradley, Devers, Bogarts, I think that the only guy that I would say is untouchable is Mookie Betts. So, I would. That's a tough question. I'm not entirely sure what the exact trade would be, but I figured you're gonna have to give up either Bradley or Benintendi, give up a top prospect, and then maybe one more pitching prospect, and it would be a move that would be tough, and I'm sure that a lot of Red Sox fans would be hurt, especially if you give up someone like Benintendi, who is absolutely beloved by Red Sox fans. But I think that if you want to win a World Series, you need to go out and get a power bat like Giancarlo Stanton. So if you have the chance to pull a trigger on a deal like this, I think you have to take it, even if you are giving up a talented player like a Benintendi.
Mm-hmm. Very insightful, Nate. I had my doubts about the Red Sox before you started talking, but that's actually a very compelling argument. I would somewhat maybe even agree with you that that's a move that could happen. What about you, Matt? Out of Stanton, Yelich, and Ozuna, who is moving, and where do you think they're going to move?
I think two of the three outfielders are going to move, but Nate, I'm afraid this is where we're going to have to start disagreeing. I don't think the Dodgers can be outbid by anyone. I think sure they have 7 outfielders, but that doesn't really stop them from doing anything. I think Stanton's as good at the Dodgers as anyone is now. I think Ozuna is also moving. I think Ben, you and I were talking about how Cardinals are a good fit. I think that's definitely something that they could look into doing. What do you think about that, Ben?
Yeah, I would love. I'm a Cardinal fan, I'll admit it, and I would love Marcell Ozuna on manning left field in St. Louis. The thing with the Cardinals is the past 2 to 3 years they've had to have someone step up offensively in order to remain competitive. 2 years ago, it was Aledmys Diaz who didn't even grace the major leagues this past year. And this past year, it was guys like Paul DeJong, who was a rookie shortstop who actually took over Aledmys Diaz's job. So when you're having guys that need to step up every year, besides Matt Carpenter and Yadier Molina offensively, they need a boost. They have a lot of young pitching that they could actually give up to the Marlins. A guy like Alex Reyes, who is a top pitching prospect who was out with Tommy John surgery last year. I think could be a piece that the Cardinals may be willing to part with in order to get a player of the caliber of Marcell Ozuna. There's rumors that the Cardinals might go after Stanton, and as a Cardinal fan, I don't want that to happen, actually. I don't want the Cardinals to be strapped with that $300 million contract. A team like the Dodgers or Red Sox have that financial capability to do something like that, but a more middle market team like the St. Louis Cardinals, although they have been one of the most successful franchises in sports, they don't have that level of money to be spending on players. So I would definitely like to see Ozuna or maybe even Yelich in St. Louis. In terms of Yelich, I was hearing rumors the other day that Philadelphia is interested. Philadelphia, in their minds, thought that they could contend this coming year with their young pitching staff and offensively. Apparently, they inquired about Yelich last offseason. It doesn't make much sense because I think they're still a few years away, but Yelich has quite a bit of control, and he arguably has one of the highest upsides out of these three players. I feel like a few years ago he was in that MVP conversation of a guy who could break out. So I've heard the Phillies. I don't know if that would necessarily happen, but that's just a rumor I've heard.
That's interesting. I mean, the Phillies this year were one of the worst teams in baseball, and if I'm Christian Yelich and I'm trying to win, I'm not sure that Philadelphia is really a better place than Miami, because at least in Miami, you're in South Beach, you got the nice weather. If you're in Philly, all you got is like snow and fans that hate you.
Yeah,
so
I was gonna say, well, like some fans are just really bad blood there. Dang, but yeah, it's really gonna be interesting to see where those players are moving. So, I think moving on into more of the free agent conversation, I think the top free agent in all of our minds is JD Martinez, and he, with his amazing second half, I think he could have potentially doubled the amount of money that he's going to receive this offseason, purely based on he proved to everyone that he can go to a different team and produce. It's not just like, oh, he can only produce in Detroit kind of thing. Like, he's the real deal, and he proved that to everyone on the national stage by carrying the Diamondbacks to the playoffs this past year. So, JD Martinez, where do you guys think he's going to end up?
I'm not sure. I haven't been reading too much about JD Martinez, but I think that if the Diamondbacks have an opportunity to re-sign him, to keep him, then I think they have to take it. I mean, they were so close. Not so close to, beating the Dodgers last year, but I think that they need to retain that team, and I think that they're on the verge of being a World Series contender, and I think that if you can keep the guy who, I don't want to say that he single-handedly carried them to the playoffs, but he definitely gave them a huge boost in the second half. If you can find a way to keep him, then you've got to.
I would love to see JD Martinez go back to the Diamondbacks. 2 words, though, Scott Boras. And that's what scares me a lot. I don't know if the Diamondbacks are willing to go into that threshold to sign players to that money. I mean, they proved it with Zach Greinke. I don't know if they want to do it again. I would love to see JD Martinez stay in the Diamondbacks organization. I'm just not sure if that's going to work out.
I think that if the Red Sox lose out on Giancarlo Stanton, we could definitely see him in Boston. He offensively was comparable to Stanton over the second half of that season, and imagine JD playing in Fenway Park. I think that would be a comparable environment to Arizona, and where it's a launching pad, especially with the Green Monster there. So I think, given Stanton's money and the Red Sox competition potentially with teams like the Dodgers in order to get a player like JD Martinez, I think it's very possible that we could see him in Boston. My heart wants him to go back to Arizona, though. I think that was a perfect fit for him. He expressed that he really enjoyed his time in Arizona and that it was a great fit with the management and everything. But, Matt, you brought up a really good point. He is a Scott Boras client. Scott Boras notoriously is just... His job is simple, and that's to get the most money for his players. And a lot of times, emotional attachment is not involved in those decisions. So it's going to be very interesting to see if JD moves somewhere. And who knows? The Nationals love signing Scott Boras clients, so maybe they'll just add JD Martinez just because he's a Scott Boras client. You never really know. So JD, going to be one of the top free agents. I would say on the pitching side, the top free agent relief pitcher in this season's in this offseason is Wade Davis. We've seen how important relief pitching is, especially in the postseason. So where do you guys think that Wade Davis, given his success over the past few years, will end up?
I think Wade Davis is as good as gone in Chicago. I think he ends up at the Astros. We already proved that the Astros had no bullpen at all. It didn't seem to hurt them in the World Series. They ended up winning it anyways. But their bullpen consisted of Charlie Morton and Lance McCullers, who are also starting for them. So I think if they can go out and get Wade Davis, a proven bullpen piece, I think that would be great for them.
Yeah, I'd also have to say that the Astros need to be the number one contender for the Wade Davis sweepstakes. I think that yes, the Astros won the World Series this year, but I would not. If I was the Astros, I wouldn't say, yeah, we won the World Series this year, so we don't need to get any better, particularly in the bullpen. I don't think that they can bank on still winning the World Series with a bullpen that was as terrible as it was during the postseason. So I think if they can go out and get, like you said, the prime reliever of this free agent class, you have to go out and get him.
Mm-hmm. I definitely think the Astros are a top contender to sign Wade Davis this offseason. I wouldn't rule out him returning to the Cubs, though. I think the Cubs want to bring themselves back to being World Series favorites. I mean, coming into the 2017 season, everyone was saying, who can stop the Cubs this year? They seem like they have a complete team. I think their starting pitching is lacking. They're going to be losing Jake Arrieta, in my opinion. I think they lose Arrieta, and so their starting pitching is going to take a step back. John Lackey's gone. I mean, he's as good as gone.
John Lester's getting old.
So, it's going to be really important to add to their pitching staff in any way they can. So I think the Cubs' top priority may be retaining a guy like Wade Davis, especially since you want to talk about a guy who put that team on his back. He was the Cubs' only All-Star this year. And so he was very, he was very influential to all of their success and eventually making the playoffs this year. So, Wade Davis is a former Kansas City Royal, right? That's where he established himself as one of the most dominant relievers. And the Royals actually are facing a dilemma in free agency this year because three of their top players, Eric Hosmer, Mike Moustakas, and Lorenzo Cain, are all pending free agents. And so, similar to the Miami situation, I mean, we're dealing with free agency here, but I want to pose the question to you guys. Will any of them stay in Kansas City? And if they don't, where do you think they will end up?
I don't think any of them will stay in Kansas City. And personally, I thought that the Kansas City Royals should have sold all three of them off at the deadline. But Ned Yost was delusional and thought that the Royals were actually contenders. But that's a different story. But yeah, I thought that they should have sold them off at the deadline because now I think you're gonna lose all three and get absolutely nothing back in return. Versus if you'd sold them off at the deadline, you could have gotten back some prospects built for the future. In terms of where they go, I haven't really been too tuned into the potential landing spots for those three players, so I won't speak on that. But I think all three of them are gone.
Yeah, I think I think again similar to Miami, I think two of the three are gone. I think a lot of the rumors heating up are Mike Moustakas is going to the Angels. I'd love to see that. He's a Los Angeles guy, and I think it would be good to see him there. The name that I've heard more recently staying is Eric Hosmer. I think it's something that seems a little confusing. I think he was as good as gone, but maybe there's some legitimacy to that rumor. Do you have anything to say about that, Ben?
Yeah, so the rumors have been that a lot of the top contending teams are pretty set at first base. I would say that at the start of the season we thought there would be definitely more landing spots for Eric Hosmer than there are now. However, I definitely think there's a spot for him on the Boston Red Sox, especially, again, given what happens with Giancarlo Stanton. I feel like once the chips fall in terms of where Stanton ends up, that's going to cause a chain reaction of a lot of different moves and teams trying to figure out what they will do instead of having Stanton on their team. So, imagine the Red Sox going out and signing JD Martinez and Eric Hosmer this offseason. That's a lot of money to be throwing around, but Nate, to your point that you've made on the show, the offense was the main lacking point, and if you were to add two bats like that, and as well as Eric Hosmer, who just came off winning a Gold Glove at first base, I think that could definitely be actions the Red Sox could take in order to become World Series contenders once again.
Yeah, I do think that Boston would be a good landing spot for Eric Hosmer, but it's interesting. I actually really have not heard anything from any sources about Eric Hosmer and the Boston Red Sox and about, potential deal there. I think that right now the Red Sox, all their eggs are in the Giancarlo Stanton basket, and I think that Eric Hosmer, like you said, is a good potential choice if they lose out in the Stanton sweepstakes, but I think that right now all their eggs are in hey, let's try and make this Stanton deal happen.
Yeah, definitely. So the Red Sox definitely won landing spot. I mean, we haven't really heard a lot. I think that's why a lot of people are like, since we haven't heard teams expressing interest in Hosmer, does he go back? Pure speculation. The Mariners possibly, they have a hole at first base. So imagine them going out and signing a guy like Yu Darvish. And if they were to go get Yu Darvish, then adding to their hole at first base, I think would definitely create a lot of excitement in Seattle and finally getting them back to the postseason. So I think Seattle could potentially be a landing spot. And we honestly don't know what's going on in Miami. We will not know unless someone is traded or Derek Jeter comes out and says these guys are not moving. And given that we aren't 100% sure on the plan in Miami, Eric Hosmer on his social media and in his interviews is very prideful that he is born and raised in Miami, Florida. What if we were to see the opposite and the Marlins really just build around the core that they have and add a guy like Eric Hosmer? Because, I mean, if you add a guy like Eric Hosmer, Justin Bour, you're great, but you can play somewhere else because Eric Hosmer is coming to play in Miami. So definitely, he's one of the most, I think, intriguing free agents this offseason because I think definitely a number of teams could be suitors for him. So there we go, guys. Kind of part one of our offseason preview. It's going to be very interesting to see moving forward where these guys sign. And once these guys sign, we're going to bring you guys, all of you listeners, all the analysis of what that means for each team, how they got better, was that a good move? We'll bring you all of that on the Comeback Kid. But so yeah, that kind of does it for that on this edition of the Comeback Kid. For that segment, we are not done yet. So when we come back, we're actually going to be previewing the college basketball season. A lot of teams kicked off their first games over this past weekend. We're going to be giving you a lot regarding Michael Porter Jr., Miles Bridges, what the chances that each team has this upcoming season. And then we're going to turn to the NBA. Nate has certain feelings about Lonzo that a lot of people are disagreeing about. When we come back, you'll be able to hear Nate's delusion, ? We'll be right back.
Light jigger, dark jigger, faux jigger, real jigger.